chosen one, pause right here. Because this is not a random video crossing your screen, and this is not another ordinary message you can afford to ignore. God is pressing this word directly into your path because something in your life is reaching a decisive moment. And heaven does not want you to miss it. You have felt it, haven't you? The strange heaviness, the exhaustion that sleep has not fixed, the pressure in your body, the weariness in your spirit, the quiet sense that something has been draining you for far too long. But hear this clearly, this is not where your story ends. God is calling you into a supernatural turning point. And what He is about to begin in you will not be small, temporary, or shallow. It will reach into the places that have ached in silence. It will touch the parts of you that have fought private battles while still trying to look strong in front of everyone else. The Lord is not only speaking comfort over you today, He is issuing an urgent call. He is asking you to stop scrolling, stop delaying, stop treating this as coincidence, and recognize that this message has found you because your season is shifting. What has been declining can reverse. What has been weakened can be restored. What has been burdened can breathe again. God is not finished with your body, your strength, your clarity, or your future. In this very hour, He is opening a door to healing, renewal, and divine realignment. And your obedience will determine whether you walk through it. This is why your spirit feels the weight of these words. This is why something inside you is stirring as you listen. Deep down, you know this message is for you. Deep down, you know God has been trying to get your attention before the next chapter begins. And the next chapter will not look like the last one. It will not carry the same oppression, the same fatigue, the same silent suffering, because God is about to break a cycle that has tried to hold you down. So, if you feel heaven speaking directly to you right now, do not stay silent. Comment, "I receive God's healing now." Let that be your declaration of faith. Then like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this message. Because what God is about to reveal next could change everything. You did not arrive at this moment by accident. And the weariness you have been carrying was never invisible to God. He has seen every silent battle, every night you tried to rest but could not quiet your mind, every morning you rose with less strength than before and still forced yourself to keep moving. What you have called delay, heaven has called preparation. What you thought was the slow breaking down of your body and spirit was not the end of your story, but the place where God began separating you from the old cycle that has tried to keep you weak, drained, and discouraged. There is a reason this message is pressing on your heart so deeply right now. The Lord is bringing you into a season of supernatural healing. And this season is not only about relief from pain, it is about restoration. It is about renewal. It is about God returning strength to the places that have felt depleted for far too long. He is not merely touching symptoms, He is confronting the root of the heaviness, the fear, the fatigue, and the silent hopelessness that tried to settle over your life. You have asked God for help, and now He is answering in a way that requires your attention, your faith, and your immediate response. This is why you cannot treat this word casually. The breakthrough you have been longing for is closer than it appears, and the hand of God is already moving before you can fully understand it. Even now, He is calling you out of spiritual exhaustion and into alignment with His healing power. As Scripture declares, "For I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Lord." Jeremiah 30:17. Ekive. Hold on to that promise, because it is not a distant hope. It is a living word over your life right now. And I need to ask you something before we go further. How many battles have you fought in silence while still trying to smile for everyone else? How long have you been asking God when your time would come? If this message is speaking directly to your spirit, comment now, God, I am ready. What you are facing is far more serious than ordinary exhaustion, and you must not minimize it any longer. This is not just about feeling tired, having an off-season, or going through another difficult stretch that will somehow pass on its own. No. What has been pressing against you has been trying to wear down your faith, drain your strength, cloud your mind, and convince you that what is breaking inside you is normal. But it is not normal for your spirit to live under constant heaviness. It is not normal for your heart to wake up burdened before the day even begins. It is not normal for your body to carry the weight of silent distress as though weakness is now your permanent identity. The danger of this season is not only the pain itself. The danger is what pain tries to teach you if it goes unchallenged. It tries to teach you to expect less, pray less, believe less, and slowly surrender to a version of life that heaven never wrote over you. That is why this moment matters so much. If you do not discern the spiritual seriousness of what has been happening, you may begin adapting to what God intended to break off of you. You may start calling captivity normal, calling depletion maturity, calling delay destiny, and calling spiritual suffocation just life. But this is not just life. This is a battle over your expectation, your strength, your clarity, and your future. And the reason this word is coming with such force is that God is not willing to let you sink quietly into a lesser version of yourself. He is interrupting the decline. He is confronting the agreement you almost made with despair. He is exposing the lie that tells you nothing will change. The truth is, you have been standing at the edge of a turning point, and heaven will not let you call it the end when God has called it the beginning. There are seasons when pain whispers, and there are seasons when it screams so loudly that it shakes everything you thought was stable. Yet, even here, especially here, God is speaking. As C. If West Lewis wrote, God whispers to us in our pleasures, but shouts in our pains. The problem of pain, and this is why you cannot dismiss the intensity of this hour. The pressure has been great because the calling over your life is great. The resistance has been violent because what is about to be released in you is powerful. The enemy never fights hardest over what is empty. He fights over what is marked, what is chosen, what is carrying oil, what is close to a breakthrough. So hear this with trembling faith. The breaking you have felt is not permission to collapse. It is the warning that something in your old season is dying. God is not preparing you for defeat. He is preparing you for emergence. He is not leading you into a slow fading. He is calling you into a holy reversal. And before this message moves any further, you need to understand that your response now matters. Your attention matters. Your obedience matters. Bing! Because what happens next in your life will be shaped by whether you keep bowing to the weight or whether you rise and say, Lord, I refuse to die in the place where you intended to restore me. This is the hour when hesitation becomes dangerous. Because what heaven is placing before you now is not a gentle suggestion to be admired and then forgotten. It is a command. It is a summons. It is the voice of God cutting through the fog, the delay, the confusion, and the heaviness that has tried to settle over your life like a permanent shadow. You have cried long enough. You have endured long enough. You have sat in places of silent suffering long enough. And now the Lord is saying that the season of merely surviving cannot continue. There comes a moment when divine mercy no longer speaks only in comfort, but in command. This is that moment. God is not just trying to soothe you, He is trying to move you. He is not only drying your tears, He is calling your spirit to stand up under the authority of His word. Some blessings do not respond to passivity. Some breakthroughs do not open to spectators. Some miracles begin when a wounded soul chooses to obey before it feels ready. That is why this moment carries so much weight. Because you can no longer afford to call delay wisdom when it is really fear. You can no longer call hesitation discernment when it is really weariness mixed with unbelief. You can no longer sit in the ruins of what drained you and expect restoration to arrive while you remain in agreement with paralysis. The Lord is confronting that paralysis now. He is confronting the exhaustion that made you slow to move, the disappointment that made you afraid to hope, the pain that made you lower your expectations, and the inner surrender that almost convinced you that this was simply the life you had been given. No. This is not the life heaven wrote over you. And if that truth feels strong, it is because God is breaking something open in you even as you read. In John 5:8, Jesus spoke to the man who had been bound for years with words that were direct, disruptive, and impossible to ignore. Rise, take up thy bed, and walk. He did not tell him to wait for a better atmosphere. He did not tell him to stay where he was until every condition felt favorable. He gave a command that carried the power to create what it demanded. And that same kind of word is reaching for you now. Rise from the thinking that has kept you bowed. Rise from the grief that has tried to define you. Rise from the silent agreement you almost made with decline. Rise from the old identity that kept calling you broken when God has called you recoverable, restorable, and renewable. Because when God commands movement, He is not mocking your weakness. He is releasing strength into it. And you need to hear this clearly. God cannot give you peace outside of Himself, because peace apart from Him does not exist. C. E.S.F. Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity, God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from Himself, because it is not there. So the answer before you is not another distraction, another delay, another attempt to numb what heaven is trying to heal. The answer is alignment. The answer is surrender. The answer is immediate obedience to the voice that is calling you forward. Something in your life is waiting on your response. And I need to ask you plainly before we go further, do you believe God is telling you to rise today? Not tomorrow, not someday, but today. If your spirit feels the urgency of this word, comment now, I will not delay. What God is leading you into now is not empty ritual, not superstition, and not a performance designed to impress heaven. This is an act of obedience. And obedience is where many people lose the miracle before it ever reaches their hands. They want God's power, but they resist God's process. They want sudden healing, but they do not want sacred alignment. They want the breakthrough, but they do not want the instruction that prepares the vessel to carry it. But you are being called into something deeper. The Lord is not merely telling you to admire the idea of restoration. He is leading you to participate in it. He is showing you that even the smallest act, when surrendered to Him, can become a doorway to something supernatural. This is why the morning instruction matters. The warm water, the lemon, the honey, the stillness, the intentional beginning of the day, these are not the center of the miracle, but they are part of the response heaven is asking from you. They are a physical act wrapped around a spiritual yes. They are a sign that you are no longer starting your day in chaos, fear, distraction, and agreement with decline. You are starting it in alignment. You are starting it with reverence. You are starting it as someone who believes that God is doing something real in your body, in your strength, and in your future. And that is where the power begins to build, not because the elements themselves are magic, but because your obedience is opening space for divine order to return where disorder once ruled. The warm water becomes a sign of softening and awakening. The lemon becomes a sign of cleansing and clearing. The honey becomes a sign of healing and divine sweetness after bitter seasons. And as simple as that may sound, never underestimate what God can attach to a simple instruction when it is received with faith. Naaman almost missed his healing because the instruction looked too ordinary for the greatness of the miracle he needed. But heaven has always worked through obedience that humbles the human mind. That is why this moment is so sacred. God is teaching you not only how to receive healing, but how to stop resisting the path that leads to it. He is calling you to begin the day differently, to approach your body differently, to approach His voice differently, and to stop treating your restoration as something distant and abstract. It is here. It is near. It is moving toward you even now. But there is still more ahead, because what begins with alignment is about to deepen into activation. And the next step will show you that God is not only touching your body, He is teaching it to come back into agreement with life. What feels like an interruption is not the destruction of your progress. It is the beginning of your healing. And this is where many people misunderstand what God is doing. Because when heaven starts restoring a life, it does not always begin with noise, speed, and outward spectacle. Sometimes it begins with a pause. Sometimes it begins with stillness. Sometimes it begins with God slowing you down in places where you thought you had to keep pushing, keep proving, keep surviving, keep carrying everything without breaking. But the Lord is showing you now that constant strain was never meant to be your normal. The exhaustion you have worn like armor, the pressure you have treated like duty, the inner tension you have learned to call strength, God is confronting all of it. Because a body that never rests cannot receive properly, and a spirit that never becomes still cannot discern clearly. That is why this stage matters so much. The brief rest, the quiet, the moment of release after the first act of obedience is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is not lost time. It is sacred space. It is the place where your striving begins to loosen its grip and your system begins to remember what peace feels like. The world teaches you to keep going until you collapse. Then call that dedication. But heaven teaches something deeper. Restoration often begins where resistance ends. And for you, this is not just physical, this is spiritual. God is teaching your whole being how to come out of survival mode. He is teaching your mind to unclench. He is teaching your body that it does not have to live under constant alarm. He is teaching your spirit that healing does not always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it comes like holy stillness settling over everything that has been inflamed inside you. That is why this moment must not be rushed through. Even the pause is working for you. Even the stillness is full. Even the slowing down is part of the miracle. C.S. Lewis understood something profound when he wrote, "The truth is, of course, that what one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life in they stand together." And that is exactly what God is unveiling here. What you thought was a delay may actually be the place where your real restoration begins. What you thought was an inconvenience may actually be divine mercy stepping in to stop a deeper collapse. What you thought was an unwanted interruption may actually be heaven reclaiming territory in your life that pressure had stolen. So do not despise the quiet part of this process. Do not rush past the hidden work. Do not measure God's movement only by what is loud enough to impress other people. He is working in your nervous system. He is working in your thoughts. He is working in the invisible places where fear has lived too long. He is working beneath the surface. And what He is repairing there will soon speak through your body, your energy, your clarity, and your peace. This is the point where healing stops being an idea and starts becoming an internal reality. And as you yield to that reality, The next stage will make something unmistakably clear. Your body is not finished. Your strength is not gone. And the life of God is beginning to answer from within. Now the response begins to rise from within you. And what was hidden starts to reveal itself through your body. This is where the change becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a sign. It becomes evidence. It becomes the first visible answer to everything you have cried out for in secret. After the stillness, after the surrender, after the moment of allowing God to interrupt the old pattern, your body begins to answer life again. Strength starts returning in quiet ways at first, but do not overlook them. The heaviness begins to loosen. The fog begins to lift. The strange weight you carried for so long without words begins to break its grip. This is not imagination. This is not emotional excitement. This is what happens when your body stops agreeing with depletion and starts coming back into alignment with the life God designed for it. The nourishment now matters, because God is not only speaking to your spirit, He is teaching you to stop feeding decline. He is teaching you to stop partnering with what weakens you and to begin receiving what rebuilds you. As the nuts and the beans enter this process, they become more than food in this message. They become witnesses of restoration. They represent strength, rebuilding, endurance, stability, and renewal. They speak to the parts of you that have felt emptied out for too long. They remind your body that it was not created only to endure damage, but also to recover, restore, and rise again. And this is where many people miss the beauty of God's movement. They are waiting for one dramatic moment while overlooking the holy power of steady reversal. But the Lord is showing you that healing often begins in layers. First, the inner agreement changes. Then the body starts responding. Then the evidence appears. You may begin to notice warmth in your body, a sense that something is waking up again. You may feel lighter, clearer, steadier. You may notice that the fatigue does not sit on you with the same authority. You may realize that your mind is no longer drowning under the same pressure. And when that happens, do not dismiss it. Do not reduce it. Do not explain away the first signs of mercy. Honor them. Pay attention to them. Thank God for them. Because what begins as a shift can become a pattern. And what begins as a pattern can become a new season of living. This is why the woman with the issue of blood matters so deeply in this hour. For years, her body carried a problem that would not release her. Year after year, loss kept speaking louder than hope. Yet the moment she touched Jesus in faith, the flow that had drained her was stopped, and power answered her pain. That story is not in Scripture to impress you from a distance. It is there to remind you that when faith touches the right place, the thing that has been silently draining your life can lose its hold. And I tell you now, what has been draining you will not speak the final word. What has been consuming your strength will not remain unchallenged. What has been feeding weakness in your life is being confronted by the restoring hand of God. This is the beginning of reversal. This is the hour when your body starts responding to heaven's instruction. This is the moment when decay meets resistance, when fatigue meets divine renewal, when your system begins to remember that it was created to carry life, not live under defeat. And as this response grows stronger, the miracle will go deeper still, because God is not only restoring your energy, He is realigning your whole being. The deeper miracle has never been only about your body. Yes, God is touching your strength. Yes, He is confronting the fatigue, the heaviness, the weariness that settled into your bones and tried to make a home inside your days. Yes, something is shifting in your energy, in your clarity, in the way your body is beginning to answer life again. But if you think this word ends there, you have not yet seen how far heaven intends to go, because what God is doing in this hour is not merely physical relief. It is spiritual realignment. It is the restoration of the inner world that suffering tried to disorder. It is the reclaiming of the parts of you that pain tried to scatter. It is the divine reordering of what fear disrupted, what disappointment weakened, and what long battles left trembling inside you. For too long, the attack against you was not only against your health, it was against your agreement. It was against your identity. It was against your expectations. The enemy wanted you to get used to living fragmented. He wanted you to believe that confusion was maturity, that numbness was peace, that barely surviving was wisdom, that dragging yourself through each day was simply what life had become. But God is exposing that lie now. He is showing you that what you called adaptation was actually misalignment. What you called endurance was often a silent injury. What you called coping was sometimes your soul learning how to live disconnected from joy, from expectancy, from holy confidence, and from the quiet certainty that God was still near. This is why the healing now feels deeper than explanation, because it is reaching places words have failed to describe. It is touching memories that still ache when no one sees them. It is touching disappointments you buried because you were too tired to keep naming them. It is touching the hidden grief of being strong for too long, smiling for too long, holding it together for too long, while parts of you quietly cried out for relief. And God is not brushing past those places. He is entering them. He is standing in them. He is breathing life into them. He is not only strengthening your body so you can function better, He is restoring your inner alignment so you can live rightly, think clearly, feel deeply without breaking, and move forward without dragging the emotional residue of old seasons into every new beginning. This is the kind of healing that changes how you walk into a room. It changes the way you carry your thoughts. It changes the atmosphere around your decisions. It changes the way your spirit responds to pressure. You begin to notice that what once shook you no longer has the same access. What once drained you no longer enters so easily. What once triggered fear now meets a different version of you. One that is not hard, not cold, not detached, but settled, strengthened, recentered. There is a sacred steadiness rising in you now. A steadiness that does not come from denial, but from restoration. A steadiness that does not come from pretending you were never wounded, but from realizing that your wounds are no longer governing your future. God is not returning you to who you were before the battle. He is bringing you into someone deeper, clearer, more awake, and more aligned than before. That is why this moment matters so much. You are not simply being helped. You are being reassembled. The scattered places are coming back together. The drained places are being refilled. The confused places are being clarified. The fearful places are being quieted. And as this realignment continues, you will begin to understand that the miracle was never only that your body could feel better. The deeper miracle is that your whole being is learning to come back into agreement with life, with peace, with strength, and with the divine purpose that was never truly lost, only buried beneath too much pain for too long. The shift that God is creating in you will not remain hidden forever. What begins in the unseen always reaches the visible. And that is why this next stage carries so much weight. Some changes happen so deeply within a person that the world notices them before the person even has language for what has changed. This is the kind of transformation moving toward you now. It will begin to show in your face, in your eyes, in the way you carry yourself, in the steadiness of your voice, in the strength of your presence. People may not understand it at first, but they will sense that something is different. The heaviness that once sat on you like a shadow will no longer speak with the same authority. the weariness that once announced itself through your body, your posture, your expression, and your silence will begin to lose its grip. There is a visible renewal that follows inward healing. And when God restores a person, He does not only touches what is private, He allows the evidence to emerge. You will look less burdened. You will move with more peace. You will begin to sound like someone who is no longer internally collapsing under the pressure of life. This is not vanity. This is not performance. This is what happens when the life of God begins to settle so deeply into a person that even their countenance starts to witness to it. And yes, there will be people who notice. Some will be surprised. Some will be moved. Some will be convicted. Because they remember the version of you that was barely holding on. They remember the strain in your eyes, the fatigue in your spirit, the silent ache you carried without explanation. But what they are about to witness is not the old version of you trying harder. It is the restored version of you rising differently. There is a real kind of miracle that enters daily life so quietly at first that it almost looks ordinary. A person who once woke up already defeated begins rising with steadiness. A person who once dragged themselves through the morning begins to feel clarity returning. A person who once lived under constant inner pressure begins to breathe again, think again, hope again, and those around them can tell. They may not have the words for it, but they can feel the atmosphere changing. That is what God does. He brings such deep restoration that the fruit begins to appear in practical ways. In your energy, in your discipline, in your decisions, in your emotional stability, in your ability to show up without the old exhaustion swallowing everything. This is why you must not despise small evidence. Do not wait for one dramatic explosion before you acknowledge that God is moving. Notice the growing strength. Notice the clearer thinking. Notice the returning peace. Notice the fact that what used to drain you no longer drains you the same way. Notice the way your body is no longer cooperating so easily with despair. Because these things matter, these are signs that something holy is taking root. And when it takes root long enough, it bears fruit that cannot be denied. The change in you will become a testimony, not because you are trying to prove anything to anyone, but because real healing always speaks. It speaks through consistency. It speaks through peace. It speaks through presence. It speaks through the kind of renewal that no longer needs to be announced because it can be seen. And this visible evidence is only preparing the ground for the next truth you must face if God is truly reversing what has been draining you. Then you can no longer afford to handle His instruction lightly. Now the warning must be spoken plainly, because mercy is not only soft, it is also urgent. If God is truly moving to reverse what has been draining you, then you can no longer afford to treat His instruction as optional, casual, or something to return to later when life feels more convenient. Delay has already cost you enough. Indifference has already stolen too much. The pattern of pushing aside what your spirit knows is important has already done damage in ways you may not have fully understood. This is why the seriousness of this hour cannot be overstated. You are not just standing in front of another inspiring idea. You are standing in front of a divine interruption that is trying to rescue you from a deeper decline. And if you ignore what God is opening before you now, you do not remain neutral. You drift backward, because neglected light does not leave a person unchanged. Ignoring instructions does not leave a life untouched. What is dismissed in one season often becomes the sorrow of another. That is why this is so weighty. If you continue delaying, if you keep silencing the urgency of this word, if you keep telling yourself that you will respond later, later may become the place where regret starts speaking louder than hope. The body can adapt to dysfunction. The mind can adapt to heaviness. The spirit can adapt to low expectations. And that is one of the greatest dangers of all, not just that pain exists, but that pain can become familiar enough to be mistaken for identity. You were never meant to build your life around survival. You were never meant to adjust yourself permanently to exhaustion, confusion, emotional drain, and spiritual dullness. Yet, that is exactly what happens when a person keeps postponing the very things God is using to bring them out. The decline becomes decorated with excuses. The bondage becomes covered with language that sounds reasonable. The fear becomes renamed as caution. The delay becomes renamed as timing. The passivity becomes renamed as waiting on God. But there is a difference between waiting on God and resisting Him while pretending to be patient. And this message is confronting that difference with force. The Lord is not trying to shame you. He is trying to wake you. He is trying to stop the slow agreement you have been making with what has been draining your life. He is trying to break the cycle before it hardens further. Because every cycle, if fed long enough, starts feeling permanent. Every area left unattended grows heavier. Every ignored instruction makes the next act of obedience more difficult. This is why your response now matters so much. Not because God is cruel, but because God knows how quickly neglected restoration can turn into prolonged deterioration. He knows how easily spiritual fatigue can spread into every corner of life. He knows how fast disappointment can settle into the body, the thinking, the relationships, the discipline, the atmosphere of an entire person. And because He knows, He is speaking now with urgency. He is saying, do not keep partnering with what is weakening you. Do not keep feeding the habits, thoughts, rhythms, and delays that have helped sustain the very condition you are asking me to heal. Do not ask for a reversal while clinging to agreement with a decline. This is the dividing line. This is the hour when your next season is being shaped by what you choose to honor. Either you keep bowing to what has been draining you, or you rise and respond to what God is using to restore you. Either you remain familiar with the old weight, or you step into the holy discipline of healing. Either you continue drifting in the direction of depletion, or you turn with intention toward life. And hear this clearly. The window before you is not small because God is limited, but because moments of divine clarity must be answered while the heart is still awake enough to say yes. Do not let this become another word that moved you for a moment but did not transform you. Do not let temporary emotion replace real obedience. Do not let the voice of this message fade under the noise of habit, distraction, or unbelief. God is calling you out now, not later. He is summoning you into alignment now, not someday. And if you honor this moment, what has been reversing against you will begin to reverse for you. And before you go, I want you to make this final declaration in the comments. I step into divine restoration now. If this message spoke to your spirit, like this video, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that their healing season has begun.